Ian the Off Kilter Crafter.
And I'm So Becca.
And spoiler alert, my birthday's on Friday.
Yay! You're going to be 29.
Plus a few.
Plus a few. That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So, Ian, I have today's topic, which
Yes.
we'll get into in just a moment. But
Yes.
before we do, I want to talk about not necessarily the quilts that are on our laps, but the bags that are on our laps. So
I know.
why don't you start first?
Okay, sounds good. So Becca was like, hey, the Holland duffel bag, let's do it. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? So we spent the holiday weekend working on our bags. And of course, I had to make mine out of Tula. And I love this bag, actually. I really, really love this bag. I think it turned out wonderfully. It matches my A Place for Everything bag really well, I feel like. And it just, I don't know. I love it. I love the puffiness of all, because I used 2 layers of soft and stable inside of the quilting. And the quilting is like big quilting. So it's not pressing that soft and stable down.
Yeah.
And I love how it turned out. And it's got the same purple fabric on the inside. I'm trying to open it and like the microphone is this is really complex with the microphone in the way.
We could also just put the pictures on that we took over the
could.
weekend.
We could do that. I'll put that. So if you're listening on the podcast, we also did photo shoots with our bags as well. So if you're listening on the podcasting apps, come on over to YouTube at least to take a look at the bags themselves. But I love it.
Yeah.
I love mine.
So Center Street Quilts, I have to give Christina a shout out.
Yeah.
Because her patterns are always easy for my brain to understand. There's a lot of text in there.
Yep.
But it's just like the information that you need. And she does a really good job making the font nice and big, not overwhelming you with details, but also illustrates.
Yeah.
And the method that she uses to put bags together is so easy because there's no drop-in lining. It's a quilted piece of fabric. It's a quilt sandwich essentially that you assemble into a 3D shape.
Yep.
And I love it.
Yes.
So her patterns for Memorial Day were 25% off, I think all 3-day weekend. And so I bought several of them and I knew I wanted a duffel bag, which is why I was like, hey, let's make this one.
Yeah.
So this is mine and it's got some whale fabric on it, which you really can't see too well.
I feel like I can see it pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I don't love it as much as I love this one.
Oh my. Such a dramatic reveal.
This is mine. So I made the whale one and I could tell as the fabric was being quilted that I was like, meh, I don't know if leave it alone.
It's pretty. It's nice.
I wasn't sure if it was what I was looking for or what I was dreaming of it. But when I saw yours done with the bigger quilting panto, I was like, yeah, that was what I was looking for. And I was thinking more texture, not necessarily the colors. So I knew I wanted to make a second one. I wanted that texture that yours has. But as I started to think through it, I was like, well, I already made one with kind of like subdued colors, blues and grays. I want one with bright colors. And so the fabric that's on here is actually my very favorite print from Tula Pink's Untamed line. When I love Tula, I love it. Like, I like some of her other stuff, but if there's a line out there that I love it. And Untamed was one of those lines for me because I am all about bright colors and I am all about florals, and this combined the two.
Yep.
So this is my bag. This I learned a little bit. I learned from yours and I learned from mine. So one of the things that I learned from yours is to use webbing as the handles. Loved that. One of the things that I learned from both of ours is 2 layers. To use soft and stable to give it rigidity, but if I want the puffiness and the quilted look, to add some batting with it. So I wanted extra batting on this. And so instead of doing 2 layers of soft and stable, which is what you did. And instead of doing 2 layers of soft and stable densely quilted, which is what I did with my dolphin bag, I used 1 layer of soft and stable and 2 layers of wool.
Yeah.
And the puffiness on this,
it's so good. It's so good.
I just want to
I
just
know.
want
I
to
keep
rub
like
it.
fondling it because it's got some really good texture. It's got that really soft wool feel
Yep.
underneath the fabric. Because mine has a lot. It's I don't want to say it's stiff, but there's a lot of rigidity to
Yep.
it, right?
Yep.
Like, but with yours, it has a nice soft kind of feel on the top, but it also has the soft and stable inside, which it gives it that wonderful shape. And you like master classed it by going and doing a directional print on
I
both
did.
the
I did.
outside and the inside of your bag.
So I was joking with my husband when I did this. When I did the first one, as I was wrapping it up, I was already saying, I don't know if I want to keep this one. I'm going to give it to Jason because my stepson needs a bag, an overnight bag. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, while I love that it's Wales, it's also a little masculine. And I
Mhm.
think we need a bag for him anyway. So I was already having it in my head that I was going to make a second one. When I did the second one, I took all of the things that I didn't love about the first go round and applied them here. And so I had two pieces of fabric from the Untamed collection that I absolutely, well, actually, technically three. I knew right away which three fabrics from that line I wanted. I wanted the purple
Mhm.
for the trim. I knew that. I wanted the raindrops for the inside. I knew that. And I wanted this for the outside. I knew that. I looked at the fabrics and the trim is not directional,
Mhm.
but the raindrops and the flowers are. And so I had to follow the directions in the pattern
Mhm.
to create my piece of fabric with that seam down in the middle so that the direction was going in the right way. But I did that for the lining and the outside,
Mhm.
which meant the backing that I had on the long arm had a seam through the middle of it.
Yep.
And so when I put my three layers of middle stuff on the long
Yeah.
arm, I had to make sure that I was lining up the seam on my top on top of that and keeping them approximately the same.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, when I trimmed it all up, I had to make sure that I was extra careful. I will tell you the only struggle that I had with this one is it was so thick. Literally, it was like a solid inch thick.
Yeah.
So, cutting it with a rotary cutter, I had to use scissors
Yep.
for most of it. And then wrestling this underneath of first of all, the Juki
Yeah.
sailed through all of this, like no problem. But getting the bulk underneath the machine through the throat of it,
Yeah.
it was
I
a physical effort.
I think that's the hardest thing about this pattern. It's not the actual pattern,
No.
it's not the construction, it's none of that. None of that is the hardest part. What the hardest part is it is a very awkward sew, especially if you have a sewing machine right up against the
Yeah.
wall.
And that's what we did.
And in the Juki, which is the machine that I used over at Becca's, that is up against the wall. So
Yep.
it was really hard for me to fit all of these layers. And even at points when I'm like trying to put the webbing on, the webbing is hitting the throat of the machine. And so it's really awkward trying to get this through the machine, but it's doable.
Yep.
You can absolutely do it.
Yep.
And the pattern itself is so easy to work with
Yep.
that the bag, she literally put this one together in about 2 hours. I feel it was about
Yeah.
two and a half hours.
We went to so I did this one on Memorial Day.
Mhm.
And the other one I think we did like on a Saturday or whatever.
Yeah.
I did this one on Memorial Day. We started that day off by going to the Quilter studio in Fairfax because they had 40% off all their cut fabric, and you
Mhm.
know we had to hit that up.
Absolutely.
So we bought a few bits and pieces of fabric, and then we came back, and I think about 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when I started. But that's when I pulled out the fabric.
Mhm.
I started starching, cutting, loading it on the long arm from start to finish, pulling the fabric and then putting the wonder clips on it to train the shape of the bag. I think I had like 6 or 7 hours into the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I just love the handles. That's my
Yeah.
biggest tip for any bags, not
Webbing,
just this bag.
100%.
It's the Holland pouch, the wee zippy pouches, whatever pouch or zippered bag you're working on, webbing is the way to go. And honestly, this is the newest webbing that Tula Pink has out, and I
Yeah.
love the feel of this one. Now, I love the look and texture of the blue
Oh,
and
yeah.
pink. I know. This webbing, she's done something different, and it feels a lot different and a lot stronger. And I don't know, it has a different texture to it.
It does. Uh,
I think I just
The
put in something else.
grooves, the weave is
Yeah.
different. It's going from side to side instead of from top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways, doesn't matter. But webbing is amazing for any kind of bags that you're working on. Highly recommend using webbing. I wish I had had a little bit of extra to do the pull tabs on either side. I know you did. I'm jealous of that. But otherwise, like, I love how this bag turned out. I can't wait to use this. This is a perfect overnight bag, a perfect day trip bag,
Yep.
Stuff like that.
I'm taking mine to Michigan.
Yeah.
I did modify the pattern. One last thing. You'll see you're showing a slip pocket.
Yep. So I have a zippered pocket on this side and then a slip pocket on this side.
I made both of mine zippered.
Oh, she's off center a little bit. Dang it.
I didn't even notice.
Dang, I just saw it as I'm looking in the
you're
monitor.
off kilter.
I
It's
am.
fine.
I
It's
am
fine.
off
It's fine.
kilter.
So anyway, that's what we worked on over the course of the week. Dude, why did you just throw it?
Well, I was gonna set it down and then it went a little further, and now like look at the corner.
He dented his bag.
It did. It'll pop back out. No
Anyway.
problem.
If you're going to make this pattern, first of all, highly suggest and always support the pattern designer, author by buying the pattern. Secondly, my tip for you, you mentioned the tip about the webbing.
Yep.
My tip for you is get as big of a surface as you can to work on the machine. You're going to struggle with cramming things into the throat of the machine. There's no two ways about that.
Yep.
But if you can put your sewing machine on a dining room table or pull it away from the wall, any of those things is just going to make it a little bit easier, because what we were up against is we weren't just fighting for space in the throat of the machine. We were fighting for space to the left, to the back, to the right, all of it.
Everywhere.
So next time I will pull the Juki out and set it at my big workstation and work on a bag there.
There we go. I'm going to put mine up there now.
Well, mine is down here away from you because you'll steal it.
Rude.
So speaking of our endeavors this weekend, I feel like one of the things that I wanted to talk about is just our journey to identifying as quilters, which, by the way, quilters don't just make blankets. Look, we made tote bags.
Tote bags.
We've made other things too.
Yeah.
I want to kind of talk about that journey for us and what it looked like. So let's start back. I know we've talked about like how we started sewing and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily want to rehash all of that. You can go back and listen to that episode. But let's think back to when you seriously started sewing and you seriously were like, okay, I feel like this is something that I want to do more of. Why don't you share that story first?
Well, going back, we're not going to rehash that episode, but I had been sewing off and on my entire life. Again, starting off with like stuffed pillows for my stuffed animals, stuff like that. I really feel like I started becoming a sewer in general when I joined the Quilt Guild.
Okay.
That is really when I said, okay, I am a quilter. I am a beginner quilter. Very beginner. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that community that I gained from the Quilt Guild. Hi, Fort Worth Modern Quilt Guild, by the way. Every time we talk about them, I will shout them out. When I joined that guild is really when I started becoming serious, I guess, about sewing and like really wanting to do more than just be a hobby of it, and make it what am I trying to say? Like I don't want to say like a business.
You wanted
or
to take
anything.
it seriously.
Yeah, I wanted to take it seriously, and I started really putting forth effort into the. Did you break it?
No, I'm kind of tired of not being able to look at you while you're talking. So I am just trying to organize this so that it's still getting my voice and I can look at you. Hi.
There we go. Hi. Well, I can look at you now.
We should be sitting at angles from now on. I feel like I've been staring at the camera, like because I doing this, like turning my head 90 degrees is hard.
It is.
Anyways.
But I think that's when I really started to take things seriously. And honestly, when I bought my first Bernina, that's really when I started to take it seriously, because I did.
Well, because you spent so much money on the Bernina, you had to.
Well, remember that wasn't the Tula Pink one yet. That was still the Aurora 440.
Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that.
I bought the Aurora 440 first, and I did get it for a really good deal. I can't believe I got it. It was $250.
Oh my gosh!
I know, for that machine. it should have been way more expensive. That person didn't know what they had. But like once I bought that machine, that's when I was like, okay, I am really taking this hobby seriously now. I am going to put forth the effort and learn about this new machine, learn about the techniques of quilting, learn about all the things that I was going to do. Because when my aunt and I made that quilt, that was an activity for us to do, right? It was like just something fun and a good way to spend time together and all that kind of stuff. Because it took over a year to put that quilt together. When I bought the Bernina, I was like, okay, let's start actually getting serious about putting these quilts together. And I was using Mom's Singer before that, which, don't get me wrong, every tool is great for the person using it. I don't want to diss people who can't afford those big fancy machines, right? But upgrading to the Bernina made such a complete difference. And I feel like I just negated everybody when I said the but. But updating to the Bernina, like...
But that's the tool that was right for you.
Yeah, it was.
We've talked a little bit about this before, and I think it's been behind the seams. Do you like what I did? Borrowed that from Fat Quarter Shop. You're welcome. We've talked a little bit about this, about how it's so funny what tools hit you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sew on a big fancy machine. I sew on a machine that is 74 years old.
Yep.
And I love every minute of it. Occasionally, I have to go over to the Juki or the Baby Lock, which are a little bit more expensive, and do things that only those machines can do. But by and large, everything's on the Singer. And for me, that's what works for me. What worked for you, what made you excited about the journey is the Bernina.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. I just don't want people to feel like I'm like, ooh, Bernina. Why is there a thumbs up? I need to turn those reactions off. Sorry, folks watching the YouTube video.
No, I don't think that they do. And I don't feel like you were coming off that way.
Okay, good. I was worried.
So no, I don't feel that way at all. I mean, you love your Bernina. There's nothing wrong with that. I love my Singer. There's nothing wrong with that. Like everybody has the tool that works for them. So it's interesting that your story, and I like this because I'm about to draw a comparison here. I like that your story started with you identifying as a quilter before you were really a quilter, right? Like you found a community and you wanted to be a part of the community.
Yeah.
That's what pulled you into quilting and got you hooked. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It was about the people and then the craft almost.
It was. It really was because they were so welcoming to me. I love the Fourth Modern. They are just awesome people. They really made me feel at home. And again, I'm a male quilter in a female dominated industry. And they were so welcoming and wanted me to be there.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So my story is a little bit different in that I sought the craft first and the people came with the craft. I did not have a community to go to. I wanted one. Well, I should say that's actually not true, but I don't feel like well, all right, let me just give you a little bit of info. So I have always been creative. I've always loved doing different creative artsy things. And I dated a guy in high school, in college. We got married. We were married for just a couple of years and then went our separate ways. I actually don't talk about him a lot because it was a big chapter of my life at the time, but it was such a clean break that I got to start over, no kids, no nothing like that. So there wasn't any baggage from that relationship. I moved to a different state, no kids, no equity to get, it was just boom, we were done. But while I was with him, his mom, my ex-mother-in-law, used to talk a lot about the practicality of things. Like, if it doesn't serve a purpose, then why do you need it? That type of thing. So I kind of have always struggled with that creative side of my brain because I want to create and I want to make things, but at the same time, I also want it to be practical.
Yeah.
And so I just I have denied myself the creative aspect for so long because of that practicality and the feeling like I was cluttering the earth with too much stuff, kind of, that I didn't allow myself to enjoy it. Also, none of the things really stuck for me.
Yeah.
They really, like, I would dabble with them, but none of them made me want to keep coming back.
Yeah.
That changed when a friend offered to teach a few of her friends how to sew. And I decided, okay, well, I like making things. Let's go see what this is about.
Mhm.
And within the weekend, I was hooked. I bought a sewing machine, but I didn't buy an expensive one.
Right.
She had a baby lock, and I was like, oh, I want a machine. And she was like, well, this one was however much. I think she's got it used for like $700. And at the time I was like, $700.
Yeah.
I went to Costco and I spent 200 on the top of the line brother that they had. And I was like, nope, I'm going to use this for a year. And if I'm still with it in a year, then I will consider upgrading to something else. But I need to prove to myself
Mhm.
that this is something I really want to do, because there was this trend of start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And to be honest, even $200 was a lot of money, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, I was not a quilter at that time. I didn't even feel like I was a sewist, a sewer, seamstress, whatever word you want to use. I felt like I was a crafter,
Mhm.
and I was just trying to figure out some DIY stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sew. Along that time, I also realized that the sewing and crafting, all of those projects that I was making were they weren't satisfying the creative process. It was
Mhm.
a struggle to make. With clothing, you have to have a big work surface. I didn't
Yeah.
have that. I didn't even have a dining room table that I could use. I had a little desk from IKEA that was like very small. I didn't have a good cutting surface. I didn't have any of that. So what drew me into quilting was the idea of working on one block at a time,
Yeah.
all of the small cuts to make something small. And then when you have a stack of those blocks, you put them together to have a quilt. And who doesn't love a good blanket?
Mhm.
That's what drew me into it. It's interesting because I remember the first time I went to a quilt shop. It was actually the Quilter studio.
Yep.
My a friend of the family had asked me if I would make a quilt for her sister who was going through chemo at the time, and I had never made a quilt. I was like, she was like, you have a sewing machine, make a quilt. I was like, what? I didn't even know what a 1/4 inch seam was.
Mhm.
But I did know that people were making these rag quilts. And so I went to the Quilter studio, and this is where you're going to laugh. I went to the Quilter studio and I bought a layer cake of chipper from Tula Pink.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't even know what I was buying.
No.
That was the first designer fabric that I ever bought,
Oh my gosh.
and it was ugly. I did not like it.
Yeah.
I bought it because it had some of the animals in it that she wanted me to feature in the quilt. So I was like, okay, this will work.
That
But I
makes
didn't
sense.
like the color palette.
Yeah.
I did not like the color palette. So anyway, I bring it home. I put this quilt together, and they had an open sew at Quilter Studio. I took the machine back. I took my machine and my project to the open sew, and I was so excited because maybe I would meet somebody. There was nobody else in that room.
Oh.
But anyway, I got to hang out with the staff, and I was really excited because they let me use a couple of tables to push them together
Mhm.
so I could lay out the quilt. And so I did that. And as I was explaining what I was doing, the store owner, Kathy,
Mhm.
had referred to me as a quilter. And I was like, oh, I'm not a quilter. I denied it right away. And I was in the process of making my first quilt, which is funny because you made one quilt and went to a guild and you're like, yep, I'm a quilter. And here I was making a quilt and denying that title.
Yeah.
And that trend continued until I got to a point where I felt like I had reached a milestone where I was making things that I was proud of and I was excited about.
Yeah.
But I had to give myself a little bit of grace too, because I was afraid if I was going to tell people I was a quilter, that I was disgracing somebody who had been there, who had been doing it, who had learned all these things. And I didn't feel like I was allowed to have that title.
Yeah.
And looking
That makes
back on that,
sense.
that's stupid. It was stupid. Like, why?
It
I
is.
can identify as a quilter.
Well, it is, but it also like I feel like first of all, it plays into the breaking the blocks interview
Yeah.
where you're wanting to like shine the spotlight on
Oh,
other
yeah.
people.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
But hey, go check out that interview.
Yeah, definitely. And so I feel like that plays in really well with that. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
second of all, I feel like a lot of times we don't we're not self-hating, but we're like
Deprecating a little bit.
yeah. We don't we push things away
Yep.
as soon as a compliment is given to us. Or
Well, and I think that's the way society treats us,
Yeah.
right? Like I was always taught, and part of this goes into that breaking the block episode, but I have always been taught to not brag
Right.
about yourself,
Right.
And so I like it's not nice to brag. It's not nice to gloat. So, you know, when I was growing up, I have 2 sisters and a brother. I'm the oldest of 4. My sister Nicole is 18 months younger than I am. And so as we were growing up, we were hitting a lot of the same milestones right around the same time. And we were close in school and all that stuff. She struggled with her grades in school. They
Mhm.
weren't great. And they were effortless for me.
Mhm.
I could have done better if I would have applied myself, but I didn't like to apply myself.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it was easy for me to get good marks. I
Yeah.
never had to worry about failing. I never
Yeah.
had to worry about any of that. And she did.
Yeah.
She did. I remember at a young age talking about how I was excited because I made the honor roll or whatever. And my parents telling me, no, we're not going to do that because
Mhm.
Nicole didn't, right?
Mhm.
Nicole didn't make the honor roll. So, no, we're not going to celebrate the fact that you did because we don't want to make her feel in like undervalued, inadequate.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. So that kind of
Mhm.
built into my core being. And I think a lot of us that we don't want to celebrate our successes.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that all the time
Yeah.
when people are complimenting me. It's really hard for me to take a compliment because I don't know, it's hard to be put in that positive spotlight and be like, "Oh, look at this." And it's like, "Oh, well, but I think that's why everybody ends up pointing out their mistakes in their
Yes.
quilts is we're always
Don't do it.
we're always like, "Oh, everyone's like, "Oh, that's so good." And then immediately you go, "Oh, well, yeah, but this seam allowance isn't great." And, "Oh, I flipped this color around. I should have done it the other way." Like we always want to like knock our projects down. But it's so important to celebrate our projects and celebrate the wins. And yeah, we may have messed up a color placement or whatever, but celebrate it. I'm still learning that. I think we're all still learning that and working on that. So, it's just something that happens and something that I feel like we all work on throughout our entire lives.
So I think the moral of the story that we've just shared from those 2 lanes, and we'll talk a little bit more about other things that I've
Mm.
got on the list, but I think the takeaway from that is to identify as a quilter, you do not have to be a blue ribbon recipient.
Absolutely.
You just have to be somebody that likes the craft.
Mhm.
Whether you make 1 quilt in your lifetime or a million, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're show worthy or utilitarian. It doesn't matter. All a quilter is, a definition of a quilter, is just somebody who likes to play with the fabric.
Mhm.
Cut it up, put it back together. It's cut and paste for adults, really, if you think about it, right? Like you're buying this beautiful fabric, and then what are you doing? Hacking it up and then putting it back together into a whole piece of fabric.
Yep. It's
So-
true. It's true. And I think there's also because I don't think one has higher weight than another. And what I'm thinking of is like a person who wins 5 blue ribbons for their quilts versus somebody who makes 92 charity quilts.
Yeah.
Like those are equal quilters.
Yes.
There's no quilter is above the other, in my opinion, between those two. And they can both successfully call themselves a quilter. Let's say that blue ribbon quilter has made 1 quilt, but they've won 5 ribbons for it. So they're a quilter in my mind.
Yeah,
Everybody who does that is. So yeah, I definitely think so. It's funny though, because you were talking about the quilt store. I don't remember actually going to my first quilt store. I was like, as you're telling the story, and I know that I should be listening to
That's okay.
digest versus
It's
listening
okay.
to listen to respond. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, wait a minute, when was the first time I went into a quilt store? And I honestly don't remember. I mean, Joann's, like
Well, but
that
that's not the
was
same,
right, right.
right?
It's
Yeah.
different. It's a
No, 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 no.
different story.
I
So,
remember, so the first year-ish that I was sewing, it was just making practical things.
mm,
I was all into the swoon bag patterns. I loved making purses and bags. I loved making clothing for my daughter, though I wasn't a seamstress. When I say clothing, I was buying a tank top from
right,
Target and attaching a piece of cotton to the bottom. So like I didn't tailor anything.
right.
It was just DIY
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scrunchies, notebook covers, things like that. Um, but then I started learning about quilting. And I remember I, I don't even, like, I think I was just looking for fabric and I didn't know where I could go. And I remember it was after church on a Sunday and Jason had Zoe. So I
Mm,
was childless for the day. And I remember thinking, I wonder if there's a store that sells fabric.
mm-hmm.
And so I put into Google fabric store and it came up with the Quilter Studio.
Yep.
And so I drove out there. They were opened on Sunday and I went in and I looked around and it was when I take that back to what I said earlier about Kathy calling me a quilter. It was at that first time when
Mm,
I walked in, I was like, no, I'm just making a rag quilt. She was like, oh, you're a quilter. I was like, no, I'm just making a rag quilt. I hadn't even made a quilt. And
yeah.
she was already calling me a quilter because I was in there looking to buy. And I remember when I told her, I was like, no, I've never, she was like, oh, pff. Like she dismissed it so quickly.
Right.
So I think the moral of the lesson is it's okay to identify as that. And there is no, I'm better than you in this community. It
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
there, there are no quilt police.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely. I think the first time I stepped foot, as I've been thinking about it, because Joanne's was there. I think the first time I stepped foot into a quilt store was when I went to Sew It Up Bernina.
Oh yeah, that
Before
makes sense.
I think it was around the time I got my first Bernina machine. I'm not 100% sure, but I remember walking in there and seeing all the bolts of fabric and being like, "Wait, why can't I just go to Joann's?" Like, why? Like, for me,
I was all about Joanne's
oh,
for the first
absolutely,
several
100%,
years.
absolutely. But it was this weird like thought of like, wait, how is this fabric different? Because I didn't see any of the like Joann's fabric in the quilt store. And so I was kind of like, wait, I don't understand the difference. And it took me a while to realize that there was a difference between like quilter's cotton and then some of the other cottons that are out there. So,
So I have a confession to make.
oh,
I know Joann's is going out of business, and I know Joann's fabric is supposed to be subpar.
supposedly.
And I do agree that there are some bolts at Joann's that I would never, even though it's being addressed as quilting cotton or cotton, I would never put into a quilt that I wanted to last.
Yeah.
But there was slash is a decent amount of fabric that I would have a hard time telling the
Yeah.
difference between quilt shop quality and Joann's fabric. And I've even seen like some designer fabrics at some Joann's. So I don't feel like you should throw the baby out with the bathwater
No.
with that either. So
No,
I feel
absolutely.
like Joann's did have some good stuff. I will
It
tell
did.
you, I will tell you after I made that rag quilt.
Mm,
Oh, I love this story. So my husband's ex-wife, they share two children together. Justice is the younger of the two and has autism.
mhm.
And so for Mother's Day, several years ago, after I made that rag quilt for my aunt, I decided I was going to make her a quilt, autism themed, from Justice. Oh, gosh. Okay, so many things I did wrong with that because, again, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
Remember, a rag quilt, you're not quilting,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're just making squares with X's in it and then snipping the edges after you sew it together. There's no binding, there's no nothing. But in this quilt, I had to. And so I was like, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money, but I need red, yellow, green, and blue fabric for autism colors. And I have this puzzle fabric that I bought off of a D-stash on Facebook. So I went in to Joann's and I picked out the 4 colors that I needed. And I wasn't looking at what I was buying. I was simply looking at the price.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to keep the price as low as possible.
Yep.
Do you know what I walked out with?
Did you walk out with muslin?
Worse. Broadcloth.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Uh-oh.
I mean, I did it.
Yeah.
It was not a great quilt.
Yeah.
So I had put the quilter's cotton into the quilt, did some sashing and cornerstones to block everything off.
Mm-hmm.
And for that broadcloth that I bought, I think it was broadcloth, because it wasn't muslin, because I feel like muslin isn't that bad, but broadcloth is real thin. And
Yeah.
So I used that, and I made it even worse because on the broadcloth, I had received for my birthday from my husband a Brother SE400, which is a computerized Brother sewing machine with a 4x4 embroidery hoop.
Oh no, I see.
Yes,
where
I
this
did.
Is going.
I did an autism themed embroidery design on every single one of those pieces of broadcloth and did not understand why there were pucks and gathers in all the fabric. Also, I didn't use stabilizer because I didn't even know what that was.
Oh my gosh.
But here I was putting a quilt together.
Yeah.
I got that whole thing pieced. And I remember I was so proud of myself, but now I needed to turn it into a quilt, and I had no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
So I did what my mom and I did with some of the panels that we bought to make baby quilts. I made it pillowcase turn. I put the fabric right sides together and put the batting in there, stitched around, left a hole, turned it inside out, and then stitched around the outside to close it up. But I needed to quilt it to hold the layers together. And my husband's ex-wife kept telling me she wanted a heavy quilt. And I had no idea what she meant by that. I was just like, could you please be more specific? It's still to this day, she says that, and I still don't know what she means. But she just kept saying, I want it to be heavy. I wanted this. I was like, okay. She wanted it to be like her grandma's quilt. I couldn't fathom what that was.
Right.
So I took 2 packages, not layers, 2 packages of Warm and Natural from Joann's.
Oh my gosh.
Each one was folded in half.
Oh my.
I had 4 layers of Warm and Natural in between those 2, so I put it together pillowcase, and I tried so hard to at least quilt down the sashing with a straight line. I could not get through it. I couldn't. So I gave up.
Yeah.
I gave up. That thing's falling apart.
And
I feel bad, but that was like one of the first 2 quilts I ever made.
Yeah.
And now I know better. But I was a quilter even then. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, because the quilt that my aunt and I made, those fabrics are from Joann's. A lot of them are from Joann's. One or 2 are from Spoonflower. But that quilt has lasted me 10 years. It has a date on it. I need to go look at the date, but it's lasted me like 10 years and it's going just fine. It's held up like nobody's business.
Well, to be fair, what's causing that quilt to kind of fall apart is the fact that it wasn't really quilted.
Yeah.
Right? Like you've got 4 layers of batting and 2 layers of fabric that are just like, the more you wash it, if those layers are not secured together, if they're not quilted together or tied together, it's going to shift. And that's what's starting to have problems. You've got thick areas and real thin areas.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about my quilt too, because like I have big hand-sized spaces open that aren't
but that's
quilted,
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the package of batting, it'll tell you how far apart your stitches can be.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What I learned, because I eventually did take proper classes, what I learned is when you're quilting a quilt, as long as you can put a hand size, give or take a little bit, in between your stitches, you're good to go.
Oh, good to know.
And the package will tell you how far apart the stitching can be. And a lot of times it's like 8 inches or something. So you're okay. It doesn't have to be densely quilted.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
So I want to talk a little bit more about our identities as quilters. I think there's another area that's going to resonate with the world. So you've claimed that you're a quilter.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just ask you point blank right now, beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, what do you classify yourself? See, you're doing
Ooh.
it, right? Like, because you want to be able to claim a certain level, but you don't want people to think that you're full of yourself,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I did this a lot at the Quilt Guild. I would say I'm a beginner, and they're like, no, no, you're intermediate. Like, you're definitely intermediate. And as I got more confident in what I was doing, I started claiming that identity and being like, okay, yeah, I am an intermediate quilter. I feel like at this point, I'm getting closer to that advanced level. I don't feel like I'm 100% like if you had like a gauge and the needle was like in the middle of intermediate. I don't feel like I'm there yet. I feel like I'm working into the intermediate level area of the gauge, but I still think there are things that I still need to work on and learn and do and all that kind of stuff. I mean, technically we never stop our learning journey.
Right.
And so like there's always ways to improve or find a new technique or new products come out on the market that are going to help us advance our quilting game
Right.
and everything. So I feel like I'm working towards intermediate because there's definitely people who have told me like I think something is beginner to intermediate, sorry,
Intermediate to advanced.
intermediate to advanced. I lost my place. Anyways, I feel like I've kind of passed over that threshold and there are still things that I need to learn, but I'm definitely taking on harder
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah. I I struggle.
Mm.
I struggle with this one. I know I'm not a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not a beginner. So I have no problem not saying beginner. And I feel like I lived in that camp for a long time. I want to say I'm advanced, but I also don't want somebody to hear that and think I'm an expert and that all of my stuff is perfect because it certainly is not. So I've thought a lot about it and I don't know where I would necessarily classify myself on on the scale of beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, whatever. But what I do know is I have tried lots of different techniques
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I have learned and have even gotten quite good at some things. I so I don't know. Like I think if you asked me, I would still tell you intermediate.
Sure.
And I don't know if I will ever say I'm advanced. Even if I were in front of a classroom teaching,
Yep.
even if I have won a million blue ribbons. And I think that's really just more about I want to recognize that there's always something more to learn, and I have not learned everything. That said, I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours doing this. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's evident in what I'm creating. I can see that progression and I feel like I am becoming I don't know the right word, but not like a master at it, but I feel like I'm very well versed.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So,
Well, and I think something that kind of bumps your level up and something that bumps my level as I'm starting to dabble in it is we're starting to, well, you've written several
yeah.
patterns. I'm starting to write patterns. And I think that takes our craft up to the next level.
Yeah.
Like, and also, like, whenever I've been entering quilt shows, I've won 2 blue ribbons. And so technically now I'm up into the was it expert level?
Master.
Master level. I'm now officially moving I've officially moved into that master level. I can't claim that I'm an artisan anymore because I'm not, you know? I've been working on designing and drawing up patterns. I've won 2 blue ribbons. I've, done the things and I am now starting to have guilds interested in having me teach and give lectures and stuff, which, hey, if your guild wants me to come talk to them virtually or in person, let me know.
Oh my gosh.
But like, you know, I feel like we're starting to hit that level where we're getting into the master and advanced level, to be honest. Like, I feel like
Maybe this is an area where yours is defined a little bit more, your advancedness, if you will, put whatever label you want on that, is defined more about the awards that you have received.
Sure.
And perhaps mine is defined less about the awards because don't have a blue ribbon, but
Not
maybe
yet. Not yet.
maybe mine is defined more in what I have learned, what I have gained, and the expertise that I've cemented in my mind by being able to communicate that out through education, whether that is writing a pattern that you're able to follow, or teaching a workshop, or teaching a class, or whatever the case is. Like I'm at that point. I am at a point in my quilting journey, whatever label you want to put on it, where I feel confident enough to be able to write a detailed pattern for you and have you produce something, even if you are a first-time quilter. I also feel confident that I can stand in front of a classroom and teach you everything that you need to know to make that quilt. I can even do it one-on-one.
Yeah.
And I feel very good in that, and I know that I know it. And I think that for me is part of why I feel like I want to claim the master level, because I am able to educate others now.
Yes.
Holistically, not just on one area. It's not about, oh, my 1/4 inches are perfect and my points never get chopped off. That's not it. It's more about the things that I have learned and am able to share with you.
Yeah, I feel like I think that's a good, what am I trying to say here? Like, there's more than one way to be mastery, because one person could be perfect 1/4 inch, perfect seams, perfect placement of color, perfect, like they can be perfect in those ways for competitions.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, you are master level at being able to write those patterns and bring that education to the people and blah, 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 blah.
Right. No, I get it. I get it, right? Like being able to produce, and this is the thing, is not everybody is a teacher. Not everybody is a natural born teacher, and I will claim that I am.
Yeah.
I have always had a passion for educating, and as part of the drive that has helped me set up, or driven me to set up, a YouTube channel was the desire to teach. I've always gotten excited about learning something new and then sharing that knowledge with other people. And YouTube allowed me to share knowledge with other people, and quilting was something new that I was learning.
Yeah.
And I like tech too. So it was like it was a perfect storm.
Yeah.
I look at even just our group of friends, right? Let's take Tiffany, for example. Tiffany is amazing. She is a natural born artist.
Yes.
I have told her this to her face. You can say it, you can tell her I said it, but she is an artist 100% through and through. And so when she takes the time to write a pattern or try to teach something, that isn't necessarily her forte. It does not mean that she can't do it. It just means that that is not what comes naturally to her.
Right.
I think for me, my natural ability is teaching. And it's harder for me to be artistic, which is why I like patterns so much, because it gives me an idea of something that has been designed. So when I sit down and decide it's time to design a pattern, that's the most difficult part for me of writing a quilt, is trying to draw it up, where that's probably the easiest thing for her.
Yeah. Like watching her when we all hung out here after QuiltCon in 2024. I had to think on that for a moment. In 2024, when you know, we all came back here, and then watching her on the long arm before you got the
Pro Stitcher.
the Pro Stitcher, watching her and having her teach me, because she did try and teach me how to do the artistic bits. It just doesn't work for me. My brain doesn't work in that form of
Yep.
design and
Yep.
artistic expression.
It's same. I get overwhelmed with I get overwhelmed with not being able to draw, for lack of a better word, the image that's in my head.
Yes.
I know what I want to be there, but I can't execute it. Even when I practice, I still have a hard time getting it where I want it to be, which is why I leaned into Pro Stitcher. And now, actually, I just finished a custom quilting a little mini quilt. I custom quilted the whole thing using nothing but Pro Stitcher, not mine. It was actually a subscriber. Her name's Marcia. Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Marcia.
Marcia sent in 3 quilts for me to tackle. She sent me a mini quilt, a table runner, and a picnic quilt. And she's like, listen, I just want them quilted, and I want to support you in learning more about Pro Stitcher. So I will send you the backing. I will send you the top. I will send you the batting. Will you please just execute and send back? And I said, sure. So over the weekend, I was able to load 2 of her 3 onto my long arm. One of them, the table runner, I did edge to edge, but it was scaled, and I had to do all the things to make it look right and really fill in the space.
Right.
But the other one, I quilted every block of that, following like all of the techniques that I have learned on the Pro Stitcher to custom quilt it. Tiffany could have done the same thing, but she would have done it freehanded.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the two of us. And you know what's hilarious to me is when she does it, she takes so much pride in this. You could give us both the same 9-patch layout and tell us to custom, I'm using air quotes, custom quilt it. And I think you would be hard pressed to tell which one is Pro Stitcher and which one is Tiffany, because she does that good of a job, and I will never be able to do that. So I use the tools that work for me.
Yep, absolutely.
Taking it all the way back to the beginning when you're like the Bernina, I was like, no, listen, I can't quilt, but I can envision what I think would look cool, and I can work with tech to execute what I need.
Exactly. Speaking of custom quilting, will you take that one back to your house when you go and continue on that one?
Honestly, I want to rip all those stitches out and start again.
Oh my.
Mary, we have a job to do this weekend. Because I really I've learned so much about the Pro Stitcher and the custom quilting that I think it needs to start over. I need to start over.
Well,
and I actually have one upstairs in my house. Why am I struggling to say upstairs? In my bedroom.
Right.
I have a quilt in my bedroom that I have taken out of my sewing room because I wanted to see what it would look like on my bed.
Yeah.
I started quilting it. It is my Atomic Starburst quilt that I did with my Dust to Dawn batiks. I started quilting it, and I got about halfway through, and I had to take it off of the long arm so I could get some other things done, and I haven't loaded it back on there. So I need to run up to my bedroom, grab that. It's all folded nicely sitting on a desk in my bedroom, but I need to grab it and bring it back down to my sewing room and load that on there and get that finished too. Because I want that to be a show quilt. And I need to do it sooner rather than later, because the more time that goes by, the more I second guess my execution on that quilt. The more I'm like, okay, I want to pick those stitches and start all over. And I just
Yep.
I don't know why we went down that rabbit hole.
Well, I was talking about the quilt that we literally, I know y'all can't see on YouTube, but there's literally a quilt underneath the TV that Becca started for me because she was.
He said it was a throwaway quilt. I was like, great. Let me try custom quilting.
Right, exactly. It wasn't, and it's not a throwaway quilt, but it was one that I was ready to get quilted, and even if it doesn't end up going into shows or anything like that, it's my own design and my own creation, and it's fun that Becca would be quilting it and everything. So. Who knows? Maybe it will end up in the show in the future.
Ian, if we pull the stitches out of that, what if? Because I know that. Hear me out. That is your design.
It is.
You drew it up. You figured out a way to put put it all together to come up with the quilt that you like. There is not a pattern for this, guys. I'm
Nope.
just telling you right now. But you put that together. What if I showed you what I have learned with my custom quilting so that you could quilt that on your own? And then you'll be able to say that you designed it, pieced it, and quilted it.
That's true. May have to do that.
It doesn't need to be a 2-person quilt. That could be
true.
a learning exercise for you.
That is true.
Once we take the stitches out.
Once the stitches come out. Mary, I love you so much.
Well, you know, I have heard other long armors talk about how they have multiple sets of leaders so that they can attach their quilt, load it, unload it. I don't have multiple sets of leaders, which is fine because I use the red snappers to load my quilts on. But I'll tell you, I am a little intimidated to load an in-progress quilt back onto the frame. I'm afraid that it's going to be ruined, and I need to just get over that fear.
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah,
because I feel like, sure, there's a little bit of shifts and adjustments and stuff as you take it on and off, but I still feel like you would be able to account for that and work with it.
In custom quilting, when you're doing custom quilting, at least this is the way I do it with Pro Stitcher, you're not doing the entire thing. You're not designing the entire layout.
Exactly.
You're designing a specific block or a specific pass or a specific row. You're working on one element of that, and when that's executed, in between those different elements that you're tackling is when you take your breaks. And so I have a very natural break that I have taken from this quilt. I was quilting all of the diamonds, and I was doing them with diamond shaped designs, and I got about halfway through, so I need to go back and do that. And I'm also sitting here realizing I don't know if I remember what thread color I used. So
I'm sure you'll figure it out.
I think it might have been graphite.
That's the one that you and I tend to gravitate.
Or maybe it was dove gray.
I don't know.
Anyway,
We'll
whatever.
figure it out.
I'll load it back on, and I will use that as an opportunity to teach you so you can do the things.
Sounds good.
You just have to be prepared to take it off, put it back on, take it off, put it back on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it can't sit on my long arm for a month, dude.
No, it won't. It won't. I'll come by after every day of work and be like, "Hi, I'm here again."
Oh God. Please don't.
So,
this podcast isn't perfect.
But apparently it's through. Wow, have we really been talking for an hour?
We have.
Oh my gosh.
We have. Yeah. I don't really know if there's, maybe just under an hour.
Technically under an
hour.
Had
a preamble before where we're spitfiring into a microphone.
We always do that before, y'all don't see that because we cut it out. We're literally setting things up, checking lighting, checking wait,
no. I'm sitting here while you're doing all of that.
That is true.
And literally I'm just going ooh-dee-doo-dee-doo, making all sorts of noise into the microphone because we can hear both of us in our headphones. And I kind of like the sound of my voice.
Yep.
So I'm just playing. And then every so often he'll go over to the computer and hit a button that changes the voice modulator.
Yep.
I sound like Chipmunks. I sound like Freddy Krueger. I don't even know.
All over the place. It's funny.
You mute me randomly. It's great.
I do. Yeah. So technically, this hasn't been an hour-long podcast, but we've been sitting here working for about an hour.
Yep. And I have a quilt I need to go upstairs in my bedroom and get. So I got to go home, go up those stairs, get that quilt, take it to the studio, and get it quilted.
Why did that sound like a song? Go upstairs, get the
I don't know. I don't know why I keep saying I got to go upstairs because I think part of what it is you live in a basement.
Yeah.
Right. And so whenever I think of my home, I think of the main levels of a house and I got to go upstairs to get out of here. So I'm always like, I got to go upstairs. And then I start second guessing in my head why I'm saying upstairs. And I feel like I have to quantify that for the audience. It's literally you live in a basement and to come and go, I have to take stairs, right? Period.
I feel like I would be the one more with the
upstairs, downstairs.
because we didn't have basements in Texas. So it's been really strange living in a basement because I've never had that experience in my entire life.
No,
so it's funny. It's funny.
It is what it is.
It's amazing I haven't fallen down more stairs to get into my basement.
I remember when we lived in an apartment. I had just moved to Arlington. We were living in an apartment in a high-rise building. I called it a house all the time. I was like, it's just sometimes you pick up a word or a phrase to describe something and you kind of cling to it.
Yeah. I said house when I lived in my apartment all the time because yes, it was an apartment building, but that apartment was my house.
Yeah. Well, in your living situation is a little bit different too, because while you have a layout that has everything that you need, you have housemates that you interact with. And so we do go up the stairs. So it's just, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And I think with my previous studio being in a basement, it has become so ingrained in my head to talk about the levels of the home. It was the basement, upstairs, and that was it. So
yeah.
Okay, I have rambled enough about the different living levels.
It's greatness. I love it. I love it. Hey, our minds work in funny ways sometimes.
Whatever.
So
whatever.
Well, this podcast wasn't perfect.
But we rambled for 35 years.
And I think we're now finished.
Yeah. And finished is better than perfect.
Behind
the seams, folks. Behind the seams.
Yep. All right.
Thank you so much, by the way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this weekend. Because it was a 3-day weekend and you spent the majority of it with me.
Yep.
You sewed your bag alongside of my prototype. And then you stuck around while I sewed the masterpiece.
Yep. I was working on my pattern, writing my pattern.
Oh, you were. That's right.
You were working on your bag.
How's that going, by the way?
Good. I think I'm in limbo. I'm waiting for something to happen. And once that happens, then I can progress forward. And so I'm just waiting for that.
I know what that something is.
You do know what that one thing is, but I'm keeping it a secret from everyone else. And it's so hard to keep it a secret.
It's more impactful to him than it is to you. But he is super excited about it.
I'm so excited. I cannot wait. It's going to be so amazing. But yeah. So, all right. Stop rambling. We'll see everybody next time.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye.